Voodoo, dark magic, tribal warfare. That's trolls. End of video. See you next time. I'm kidding. But if you have been keeping track of my community tab lately, actually in the last few days, I dropped a poll there asking you all what you would like to see in terms of lore of World of Warcraft, specific races that you might like to see, and overwhelmingly, almost, the trolls came out on top. The Forsaken were close behind though, so maybe they're next. And a moment of silence for the gnomes, because I believe one person voted for gnome lore. I can't say I blame you. Sorry, gnome fans. But that is the focus for today's WoW lore video. A deep dive into one of the most ancient races in all of Azeroth, their very violent and aggressive history, and how some of them at least came to be some of the most respected and stalwart allies of the Horde. Shall we get into it? Let's get into it. At the dawn of Azeroth's creation, many races roamed the world, and trolls were one of them, so they were one of the first races to ever walk the face of the planet. There were also Tauren and the Akir, who we'll get back to later. They're very relevant. But the trolls covered a huge portion of this continent, and that's continent singular. It was only one landmass at this point, called Kalimdor. All of these trolls were part of one enormous tribe, and that tribe was known as the Zandalari, the original tribe from which all other troll tribes that exist come from. Over time, the Zandalari would split into two further tribes. Those would be the Amani and the Gurubashi, who we'll focus on for today. Now, these two tribes, empires, they didn't like each other very much, but at the same time, they weren't at each other's throats all the time. Instead, all of their fighting power was focused on the Akir. Now, what are the Akir? They're basically a race of skittering little bug people. Insect-like creatures anyway, and they were bent on taking over all of Azeroth. Now, this was already a problem, but then a group of very curious trolls accidentally awakened Kithix, one of the Cathraxi. As a brief aside, the Cathraxi are a more advanced kind of bug people, and they were able to direct and manage the Akir. So the Cathraxi were awakened, and they viewed the trolls with absolute contempt. They hated them. And so, because the Cathraxi were able to control the Akir, they told the Akir to just crush as many of the trolls as they possibly could. And during this time, a lot of the smaller groups of troll tribes were completely wiped off the face of the earth. We'll probably never know anything about them. They were just wiped out. Eventually it all got a bit too much, and the trolls created an alliance called the Empire of Zul. The Gurubashi joined this alliance along with the Zandalari, and those Zandalari took on the role of controlling the troll armies. The Empire of Zul was mighty, and Kithix was gravely wounded, but on the whole, the trolls spent thousands of years trying to fight back against the Akir. And eventually they pushed them so far back that the Akir split into two separate kingdoms far away from each other. The Zandalari wouldn't just have them pushed back though, they wanted the Akir threat to be completely ended for good. And so they convinced a few of the most power-hungry tribes to set up strongholds throughout the continent of Kalimdor. And those main three tribes were the Gurubashi, the Drakari, and the Amani. So they were split up, they didn't have to argue, and they would have uncontested claim to these vast, fertile lands where they could grow their tribes. Now, at some point during this time, it's said that the trolls and night elves came across each other. It's generally thought that night elves are actually previously trolls, a splinter that kind of came off from the main group and found the Well of Eternity and their forms changed. You can learn a little bit more about it in my night elf history video, which once again I'll link somewhere. But in any case, the Night Elves were trolls whose forms had changed. But there are plenty of elves who deny all this and say it's all incorrect, but I think that's a rivalry thing. I think they do share an ancestry, personally. Either way though, the Night Elves immediately fought against the troll tribes, wanting to carve out a large piece of Kalimdor for their own lands as well. This battle went on for a pretty long time, until the Sundering happened. Once again, for more on what the Sundering is, you can check out my Night Elf video where there's a bit more information, but TLDR, there was a big explosion and the single continent blew apart into several different continents. When this happened, so too were the tribes split amongst the new land masses, so most of the Gurubashi ended up in what is now the Eastern Kingdoms, in the south area, which is what we now know as Stranglethorn Vale. And it's from these Gurubashi in Stranglethorn Vale that the Darkspear Trolls originate. For the next few thousand years though, the Gurubashi of Stranglethorn struggled to survive. They were a whisper of this once great empire that they had been in ancient times. In their desperation, they called to their gods for aid, which turned out to be a terrible idea. They shouldn't have done that. The trolls have many ancient gods, or Loa as they call them. Bwansamdi is one, Gonk is another, but the one that they called this time, and the only Loa who answered, was Hakar, the Soul Flayer. Now Hakar did bring the Gurubashi the power they wanted, but it came at a price. After all, the blood god requires sacrifices, and so the trolls offered up the souls of their people to keep Hakar appeased. This was not enough for Hakar though, and he demanded that his Hakari, who were the priests that worshipped him, find a way to summon him into the real, tangible world. Most of the Hakar were actually just horrified at the thought and refused completely, but there were a few who were still devout and wanted to obey, and they succeeded in summoning Hakar into the world, and those trolls were known as the Atalai. This caused everything to kick off. The Hakari who were against the Atalai revolted, along with the rest of the Gurubashi, and the Atalai were decimated. Very few of them survived, and for the most part they were wiped out. Unfortunately, this also went wrong, because the Gurubashi eventually decided that they wanted to cut all ties with Hakar, and started going after the loyal Hakari as well. Of course, the Hakari were furious and they had been betrayed. And so they fled north and actually found the few remaining Atalai who had fled and joined forces with them again, so that went really well, as you can tell. But they once again sought to bring Hakar back to life. The aspect of the green dragonflight Ysera, however, made sure that they failed. She smashed their temple that they made in the Swamp of Sorrows, and you can see it in-game today still. This is what's called the Sunken Temple. Anyway, back to the Gurubashi. Things were not going very well for them at this point at all. They were splintering, fragmenting into different smaller tribes, and each of them were trying to take a separate part of the Stranglethorn jungle. These included tribes like the Bloodscalp, Skull Splitters, and they were all just fighting amongst each other all the time for the land, the pieces and scraps of land that they had. But among them was one of the smallest splinter tribes, and those were the Darkspear. Now, being one of the smallest tribes, the Darkspear really struggled to hold their lands. Eventually, they were driven off the mainland and they were forced to settle on a group of remote islands off the coast. And we now know those islands as the Broken Isles. They didn't even have a fun time there though. They were plagued by humans from Kultiris and Murlocs, which is arguably worse. At this time, the leader of the Darkspear was Sen'jin, and all he wanted for his people was peace after centuries and centuries of bloodshed, and it seemed hopeless to him, until one day he received a vision of a green-skinned creature, a Farseer no less, one like him, who would drive all of their threats away. Soon enough, this came to pass. A fleet of ships washed up on their shores, led by the orc Thrall during his exodus from Lordaeron. Sen'jin warned him of the human encampment that had set up on their lands, but Thrall was just nothing but grateful for the information and actually offered to help Sen'jin and his people drive the threat away from their islands. That actually went really well, but then everyone was captured and attacked and dragged underwater by the Murlocs. So, swings and roundabouts really, I don't know. Their plan was to sacrifice Sen'jin to the sea witch Zajira, who was a Naga. Now, Naga are another offshoot of the Night Elves related to Queen Ashara and her whole folly that she had, but you can watch more about that in the same Night Elf video. There's a lot of history in there. Thrall tried his best to save Sen'jin from his fate, but he was too late in the end, and Sen'jin died. Before he died though, Sen'jin was able to tell Thrall of his vision, and he pled with Thrall to lead the Darkspear to their destiny. After repairing their ships, Thrall went to Sen'jin's son vol'jin and offered him a place on their Horde. Vol'jin took the offer gladly, remembering his father's wishes, and even sent some troops with Thrall as he left the islands. The rest of the Darkspear remained on the islands for about a year, gathering supplies and then setting off for Durotar, where they made their home on the Echo Isles, not too far away from the Horde capital of Orgrimmar. Now, there are some things that are second nature to trolls. Rituals and beliefs have been a part of their culture since the ancient days at the dawn of time. While this was accepted by the Horde, some aspects were not. Shamanism and worship of their gods and spirits? Fine, not a problem. But we have to remember that the Darkspear originate from the aggressive Gurubashi tribe. And with the Gurubashi come black magic, sacrifice, and voodoo. This was their history though, their belief. To trolls, the spirits of the dead are also an entity, greedy and dangerous, and jealous of those still living. Because those spirits miss the land, they need to be appeased, which is why trolls tend to sacrifice their enemies, just to keep the spirits happy and make sure no havoc breaks out. With all of this in mind though, the orcs didn't really see it that way. The thing with orcs is that they revere the spirits of their ancestors. And those ancestors offer them advice and guidance and lend them their power. Orcs actually revere spirits of all kinds in the end. Nature, creatures, other people. They're shamans at heart. So, needless to say, they were pretty disturbed by the trolls' practices. Thrall asked vol'jin to stop, and vol'jin actually agreed to this. It wasn't immediate, but over time the Darkspear let go of those ancient practices from their old Gurubashi days. The fact is, while their belief is strong, their desire to survive is a bit stronger. Plus, vol'jin wanted to honour his father's wishes and keep them in the Horde, so he did what he thought was best. It mostly went well. However, there are always rumours of those who still practice the old ways in secret, and there are even some who voice their opposition loudly. One of those was a troll named Zalazane. He loved power, and he let it overwhelm him completely. Eventually, he used dark voodoo to take away the free will of some of the Darkspear tribe, making them completely obey his commands. Vol'jin and the few Darkspear who were unaffected were forced to leave the Echo Isles completely, and instead they settled in a fishing village on the shore, kind of across the way from the Echo Isles, and they named it after his father, Sen'jin Village. This is actually the troll starting area if you decide to make a troll character, although I really hope they get a new city one day. I'm crossing my fingers. Vol'jin eventually decided to leave his trusted advisor, Master Gadrin, in charge of Sen'jin Village, and departed to Orgrimmar, where he became Thrall's advisor. After the fight against the Lich King Arthas in Wrath of the Lich King, Vol'jin then led an effort to defeat Zalazane once and for all, and he was successful, reclaiming the Echo Isles for their own. Not too long after, Thrall stepped down as War Chief of the Hall and named Garrosh Hellscream the new interim War Chief. This caused a lot of tension. The trolls especially were wondering what their place was in the Horde under Garrosh's leadership. He was pretty martial about it all and tried to take them away from their lands and put the trolls under martial law. It wasn't a good time to be a troll. The Zandalari did also attempt to reunify the remaining troll tribes and bring them back to their former glory, but only the Darkspear declined, because at this point they view the Horde as their true people. It all gets a bit dicey after that. Basically, Garrosh tries to assassinate vol'jin and fails, and then vol'jin leads a rebellion against him. Garrosh was overthrown, and then vol'jin, for all his loyalty, was named the new war chief of the Horde. Very well deserved, if you ask me. But then, during the invasion of the Burning Legion on Azeroth, vol'jin was fighting on the front lines, and he was eventually mortally wounded and died. So the Darkspear were leaderless for a while, but during the Battle for Azeroth expansion, the Darkspears found a new leader in Rokhan. Rokhan was a shadow hunter and a scout, and a big presence among the trolls. Under his leadership, they actually succeeded in finally recruiting the Zandalari into the Horde, and that's why you can now play a Zandalari troll if you have the allied race. At this point in time, the Darkspear and the Zandalari are close, and Rokhan actually advised Princess, now Queen, Talanji as she rose to her position as leader of the Zandalari trolls. All other trolls hold the Darkspear in contempt now. Like the Raven Tusk and all the other tribes, they're held in contempt. They don't like the Darkspear for their betrayal and abandoning them to the Horde. But that's the most we've heard of the trolls up until recently. So Rokhan is their leader, they still have the Echo Isles and Senjin village. Mostly they also have a troll district in Orgrimmar, but things have been quiet on a lore front. Having said that, in patch 10.2.7, which I think is a way away, the trolls will finally get their heritage armor. Finally, I'm so excited for them. Along with the Draenei as well, which, you know I'm excited, I love my Draenei. But how will that go, I wonder? How close will the heritage armor quest stick to their ancient history and recall all the stuff of the past? New tribal troll wars? I really wonder. Maybe it won't be that epic. I can hope though. In any case, I hope you really enjoyed that adventure through ancient troll history all the way up to the present day. And hopefully you know a bit more about the Darkspear trolls and might even be tempted to roll one. I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but do people play trolls these days? Like, are they popular? I actually have no idea, but I feel like more people should be playing trolls. They're actually pretty cool and interesting in terms of their lore and their history and the struggles that they've been through since literally the beginning of time. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. As always, you know I love reading them whenever I get a chance. Please also like this video if you liked it, and please go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I always love to see new subscribers here. It warms my heart, and I'm always so thankful for everyone who comes to my corner of the internet for a little chill time and world building and storytelling. Either way, have a great day wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you in the next video.